For years, Dan Dotson's voice controlled chaos. Daryl Sheets chased fortune with fearless bets, and Dave Hester thrived on conflict that kept viewers glued to their screens. They were not just reality TV personalities, they were symbols of risk, power, and sudden wealth. But when the cameras stopped rolling and the applause faded, something darker followed them home. Fame did not disappear quietly. It collapsed, leaving behind health crises, lawsuits, broken families, and careers that never fully recovered. This is the story of what happened after the bidding stopped, and why so many of the original faces of Storage Wars are struggling today. When fame became the only safety net. When Storage Wars premiered, it was never supposed to become a cultural juggernaut. The premise was simple. Abandoned storage units, fast auctions, and everyday buyers gambling on the unknown. But simplicity became spectacle. Within a few seasons, the show had turned ordinary auctioneers and bidders into recognizable television stars. Dan and Laura Dodson became the steady heartbeat of the series, guiding chaos with practiced confidence. Daryl Sheets turned high-risk bidding into a personal brand. Dave Hester leaned into confrontation, becoming the villain audiences loved to hate. Their lives began to revolve around the show's momentum. What few people understood at the time was how dependent everything quietly became on that momentum. As ratings climbed, appearances multiplied. Side businesses benefited from exposure. Speaking engagements, spin-offs, and social media relevance followed. The cast did not just participate in the show. Their identities were reshaped by it. Auction houses filled faster. Thrift stores saw more foot traffic. Online followings grew. Storage Wars stopped being a job and became the foundation holding everything else together. That foundation cracked in 2019 when A&E abruptly placed the series on hiatus due to internal financial pressures. There was no slow transition, no graceful exit. One moment, the show was a long-running success. The next, it was gone. For viewers, it felt like a pause. For the cast, it felt like a collapse. Income streams tied directly to visibility dried up. Businesses that depended on television traffic had to survive on reputation alone. For some, that transition was manageable. For others, it was devastating. The emotional toll was immediate. Years of living publicly had conditioned the cast to constant validation, recognition at auctions, attention online, relevance in pop culture. When that vanished, silence replaced it. For those already facing personal challenges, the loss of the show amplified everything. Health problems became harder to manage without structure. Family tensions worsened under financial uncertainty. And for the first time, many of these former stars were forced to confront a question they had never needed to answer before. Who are you when the cameras stop caring? That question would haunt nearly every original cast member in different ways, setting the stage for a series of crises that no storage locker gamble could have prepared them for. Dan and Laura Dodson, holding the line while everything breaks. Among all the original faces of Storage Wars, Dan and Laura Dodson appeared to be the most stable. They were not bidders chasing luck, but professionals controlling the rhythm of every auction. Their marriage and business partnership predated television fame, which gave the illusion that they were immune to the chaos that reality TV often creates. On screen, their chemistry felt effortless. Laura's sharp reminders to buyers, Dan's rapid-fire cadence, and subtle facial cues when bidding spiraled out of control. But behind that control, their private life was quietly under siege. In 2014, Dan Dodson suffered a double brain aneurysm, a medical emergency that nearly ended his life. Recovery was not quick or simple. It required extended treatment, rest, and a level of vulnerability rarely acknowledged by someone whose job depended on commanding rooms full of aggressive bidders. The show continued, but the physical and emotional strain never fully disappeared. Years later, another incident underscored how fragile things had become when Dan nearly lost a finger breaking up a dogfight. a reminder that danger did not only exist on television sets. The most terrifying moment came when their son Garrett was caught in a shooting and required emergency surgery. For Dan and Laura, fame became irrelevant in that moment. The stress of public life collided with the fear every parent understands, the possibility of losing a child. Dan later acknowledged feeling profoundly grateful simply that Garrett survived. That gratitude, however, came with lasting emotional scars that no audience applause could erase. When Storage Wars was placed on hiatus in 2019, the timing could not have been worse. Health scares, family trauma, and suddenly disappearing television income converged at once. Unlike bidders who could step away, the Dodsons were deeply tied to the infrastructure of the show itself. They shifted focus entirely to their private business, American Auctioneers, running auctions across California to keep stability alive. It was not a fallback plan. It became a lifeline. When the show returned, Dan and Laura returned too, but something had changed. Television was no longer the center of their world. Survival was. Their endurance is not a story of triumph, but of persistence, holding a partnership together while everything else threatened to unravel. In a genre built on disposable personalities, the Dodsons remained standing not because fame protected them, but because they learned to live without depending on it. Daryl Sheets and Dave Hester, when winning nearly killed them. Daryl Sheets built his reputation on fearlessness. On Storage Wars, he was the bidder willing to risk everything on instinct alone. While others hesitated, Daryl leaned in harder, trusting his eye and his luck. That confidence paid off spectacularly when he uncovered artwork later valued at $300,000, the largest single profit in the show's history. To viewers, Daryl became proof that boldness could beat caution. But the lifestyle that fueled that legend carried a cost his body could no longer absorb. In 2019, Daryl suffered back-to-back heart attacks that required emergency surgery. The news stunned fans who had grown accustomed to seeing him thrive under pressure. This was not a minor scare. Doctors warned him that stress, long hours, and years of physical neglect had finally caught up. For a man who lived on adrenaline, being told to slow down felt like being asked to surrender his identity. During recovery, Daryl publicly acknowledged how close he had come to dying, describing the experience as a forced reckoning rather than a temporary setback. He committed to serious lifestyle changes, losing 40 pounds, and reshaping his daily routines. Retirement followed, at least in theory. He relocated to Arizona, choosing a quieter existence centered on fishing, family, and time with his granddaughter. Yet even as his health improved, something restless remained. When Storage Wars returned, Daryl returned too. His bidding was less aggressive, his presence quieter, but the pull of the auction block proved stronger than the fear of relapse. For Daryl, stepping away was never permanent. It was survival mode, not surrender. Dave Hester's story unfolded differently, but ended in similar isolation. From the beginning, he leaned into confrontation. His aggressive tactics and infamous catchphrase made him unforgettable, but also expendable. In 2012, Hester accused the producers of staging outcomes and planting items inside lockers to manufacture drama. He filed a lawsuit that effectively declared war on the franchise that made him famous. The legal battle dragged on for 2 years, ending in a settlement that left details sealed but careers damaged. Though Hester returned briefly after the dispute, the damage was irreversible. Trust between him and the production was broken. Eventually, he exited the show permanently and disappeared from mainstream attention. Once one of the wealthiest and loudest figures on screen, Hester transitioned into a quieter life focused on consulting, auctioneering, fishing, and writing ebooks. His long-rumored tell-all book never arrived, leaving behind speculation instead of closure. For both men, victory carried consequences no locker reveal could show. Daryl nearly lost his life chasing the rush. Dave lost his platform chasing the truth as he saw it. Their stories reveal the same truth from opposite angles. When fame becomes the battlefield, even the strongest players bleed. Brandon Sheets, Brandy Passante, and Jared Schultz, when family took the hardest hit. For Brandon Sheets, fame arrived early and disappeared without warning. As the son of Daryl Sheets, he grew up inside the auction world, learning to gamble on instinct before most people learned to budget. On Storage Wars, he earned the nickname the Side Bet, becoming known for risky secondary bids that sometimes paid off spectacularly. For 8 seasons, Brandon was a fixture of the show, not just as Daryl's son, but as a personality in his own right. Then, in 2016, he was quietly cut from the cast due to budget reductions. The decision was not framed as personal, but it felt deeply personal. Brandon publicly expressed frustration online, signaling a sense of betrayal after years of loyalty. Suddenly, the show that shaped his identity was gone. He relocated to Arizona and attempted to rebuild through real estate, but the transition proved short-lived. Eventually, Brandon stepped even further away from public life, taking work outside television and focusing on raising his family. His absence from the show's revival was not an oversight. It was a choice. For Brandon, survival meant leaving the spotlight behind before it hollowed him out completely. Brandy Passante and Jared Schultz represented a different kind of fallout. Their volatile chemistry made them one of the most recognizable duos on Storage Wars. Viewers watched them argue, reconcile, and outbid competitors with an intensity that felt inseparable from their relationship. Their spin-off series exposed the strain of running a business while raising children under constant scrutiny. What felt entertaining to audiences became exhausting in real life. In 2018, their romantic relationship ended, though the news reached the public much later. The separation marked the collapse of a partnership that had blurred personal and professional boundaries for over a decade. Brandy returned to the show after the hiatus, navigating fame alone for the first time. Jared did not. His removal followed legal trouble that permanently altered his role within the franchise. Afterward, both retreated in different directions, rebuilding separate lives away from the chaos that once defined them. What unites Brandon, Brandy, and Jared is not failure, but disillusionment. The show promised opportunity, but demanded intimacy, conflict, and endurance in return. When that balance broke, family became the cost. Fame did not just change careers, it reshaped relationships in ways that could not be undone. Barry Weiss, Kenny Crossley, and Ivy Calvin, surviving after the noise. Barry Weiss never tried to hide behind authenticity. From the moment he entered Storage Wars, he treated reality television as theater. His flamboyant entrances, eccentric confidence, and self-aware humor made him memorable, but they also masked a deeper truth. When his spin-off projects failed to gain traction, Barry faced something unfamiliar: irrelevance. By the time he stepped away from the franchise, the industry had already moved on. In 2019, a serious motorcycle accident forced him out of public view entirely, requiring multiple surgeries and a long recovery. When Barry eventually returned to the show, older and quieter, it was less a comeback than a reminder that even the most carefree personalities are not immune to time and physical fragility. Kenny Crossley's journey followed a quieter arc. Before television, he served in law enforcement, a career rooted in discipline and structure. Storage Wars offered him something different: freedom, humor, and creative expression. During the show's hiatus, Kenny turned inward. He explored music under different aliases, launched food-related ventures, and openly discussed weight struggles and self-care. Unlike others, Kenny did not collapse under the loss of fame. Instead, he diversified. But that reinvention came from necessity, not comfort. The show that introduced him to millions no longer guaranteed stability, forcing him to rebuild piece by piece without relying on nostalgia. Ivy Calvin entered Storage Wars with physical dominance and competitive fire. Known as the King of Palmdale, he embodied control and intimidation at the auction block. But Ivy eventually chose distance over dominance. Stepping back from the show allowed him to focus on his thrift business and family life, something reality television had slowly eroded. His sporadic appearances since then feel intentional, not accidental. Ivy did not fall. He withdrew before the fall could reach him. Together, these stories reveal a pattern rarely acknowledged. Survival after reality television does not look like victory. It looks like adaptation. Some walked away by choice. Others were pushed. All were changed. Fame did not destroy them in one dramatic moment. It faded, leaving them to face the quiet consequences alone. So when you look at the original faces of Storage Wars today, do you see failure? Or do you see people who paid a heavy price for entertainment we once enjoyed? Let us know what you think in the comments, and if this story surprised you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold television histories.